Welcome to the world of science function. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The Alien Council chamber was a sight to behold, an amalgamation of bioluminescent structures and pulsing, translucent walls that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. High above, glowing orbs hovered, casting an ethereal light that refracted through the crystalline floor. It was in this awe-inspiring venue that the Intergalactic Alliance gathered, a consortium of countless species, each more bizarre and fascinating than the last. Among them were the Brel, a race of squid-like beings with iridescent skin, the towering, crystalline Vrash, and the insectoid Ctherin, whose multifaceted eyes sparkled like tiny galaxies. Standing in stark contrast to this menagerie of advanced alien civilizations was Gunnery Sergeant John "Johnny" Carter of the United States Marine Corps. Clad in his standard-issue olive-green uniform, his boots clicked awkwardly against the shimmering floor. His face was a mixture of mild annoyance and bewilderment as he glanced around the chamber, distinctly aware of the eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, that focused on him. Johnny wasn't new to feeling out of place, but this was an entirely different league. He hadn't joined the Marines expecting to become Earth's first cultural envoy to the galaxy. Let it be recorded, intoned Zixler, the Brel who presided over the council, its voice a melodic symphony of harmonized tones, that we welcome the human representative to this historic discourse. Johnny cleared his throat, tugging at his collar. Thanks. Happy to be here. I guess. The council members exchanged what could only be described as telepathic glances. They had invited humanity to join the Alliance after observing Earth for centuries, deeming humans relatively harmless and primitive compared to the galaxy's older species. Yet, they were endlessly curious about the curious contradictions in human behavior. It was Zixler who finally broke the silence. "Human, we have observed your species for eons and find you perplexing. Your capacity for compassion and cooperation is unparalleled among sentient beings. Yet, we have also witnessed acts of destruction that seem disproportionate. We seek to understand." Johnny shrugged. "We're complicated, sure. But we're not so bad." Another alien spoke up, this one a Ctherin whose chittering voice was translated into a crisp monotone. "Your history of conflict spans millennia. Yet you innovate and create during these conflicts. We are intrigued by the concept of war crimes, as your species labels them. What motivates such rules in the midst of organized violence?" Johnny stared, caught between disbelief and dark amusement. "You want to know about war crimes?" The aliens nodded, or at least gestured in a manner that seemed affirmative. To them, war was either a ritualistic engagement with strict outcomes or a thing of their distant past. The concept of rules within chaos baffled them. "All right," Johnny said, pulling out a chair and plopping down. "Buckle up, this is gonna be a ride." He began with the Geneva Conventions, explaining the basic principles: no torturing prisoners, no targeting civilians, no chemical weapons. As he spoke, the aliens listened intently, their expressions unreadable but their focus absolute. For Johnny, it was surreal. He had given plenty of briefings in his time, but never one where the audience included beings with exoskeletons, extra appendages, or no discernible faces. "So, let me get this straight," interrupted a Vrash whose crystalline form glimmered as it spoke. "You engage in wars, activities inherently aimed at annihilation or subjugation, but impose limitations on the methods of annihilation?" Johnny rubbed the back of his neck. "When you put it like that, yeah, it does sound kinda nuts. But it's about being civilized. Even in war." The room buzzed with alien murmurs. The Ctherin leaned forward, its mandibles clicking. "But why engage in such conflicts to begin with? Your planet has resources sufficient for peaceful coexistence." Johnny snorted. "You'd think, right? But humans are ambitious, competitive, sometimes greedy, sometimes scared. Usually a mix of all that." Zixler tilted its gelatinous head. "And these war crimes you mention, are they frequently committed?" "Unfortunately," Johnny admitted, his tone growing somber. Not everyone plays by the rules. The room grew silent, a palpable tension replacing the earlier curiosity. Finally, Zixler spoke again, its tones tinged with unease. We had assumed your kind were evolving beyond such barbarism. Perhaps we were mistaken. Johnny leaned forward, his expression serious. Hey, look. We've got our flaws, no doubt. But we're not just about war. We're also about protecting the innocent, helping each other out, exploring, learning. We're complicated, sure. But there's a lot of good in us, too. The words hung in the air, a quiet challenge to the council. Johnny wasn't just defending humanity, he was asking the aliens to see the potential in his species. Yet, beneath the surface, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being scrutinized on a level he couldn't comprehend. These beings had observed Earth for centuries, but could they really understand what it meant to be human? The moment was broken by a sudden, echoing alarm. The chamber's walls pulsed red, and a voice, translated into Johnny's earbud, announced an emergency. An unknown vessel had entered the Alliance's space, broadcasting a cryptic message. What's going on? Johnny asked, standing up, his hand instinctively moving to where a weapon would normally hang. A breach, Zixler explained, its calm demeanor wavering for the first time. Unprecedented. As chaos erupted around him, Johnny felt a familiar adrenaline surge. Conflict he understood. Whatever was coming, he'd face it head-on, like any good Marine. The aliens might think they knew humanity, but they were about to see what humans were truly made of. Johnny followed Zixler and the other council members as they rushed to the observation deck of the council's towering citadel. The chamber was a massive, domed space with walls that acted as transparent screens, projecting real-time views of the cosmos outside. What Johnny saw made his stomach drop. A hulking, obsidian-colored vessel loomed in the distance, dwarfing the sleek Alliance ships stationed around it. Its surface seemed to writhe as though alive, pulsating with a strange, malevolent energy. Identification unsuccessful, a disembodied voice reported, its tone unnervingly calm. No record of this vessel exists in the Alliance database. That's never a good sign, Johnny muttered under his breath, earning him a few quizzical glances from the council members. The alien delegates, despite their vast technological and intellectual superiority, seemed frozen by the unfolding situation. This was no mere procedural anomaly, this was an existential threat. Johnny, on the other hand, had been in situations where freezing meant death. His instincts kicked in. So, what's the protocol here? Johnny asked, trying to inject some urgency into the tense atmosphere. You guys got a battle plan, or do you just stare at it and hope it goes away? This is uncharted territory, Zixler admitted, its usual melodic tone tinged with unease. We have never encountered such an entity. Johnny rolled his eyes. Right. Guess that makes me the expert, then. He stepped forward, ignoring the incredulous looks from the assembled council members. First things first. What's it doing? Any signs it's gearing up to attack? It has not fired, a crystalline Vrash delegate replied, its voice chiming like glass. But its energy readings are unprecedented. Well, sitting around won't help, Johnny said. Let's try talking to it. You've got translators, right? Zixler gestured, and a shimmering console appeared before Johnny. He tapped a few buttons, amazed at how intuitive the interface was despite being alien. A microphone-like device emerged, and he leaned in. This is Gunnery Sergeant John Carter of Earth, he said, keeping his voice steady. We're part of the Intergalactic Alliance. State your purpose. The response was immediate, a low, guttural sound that vibrated through the chamber, making the walls shiver. It wasn't words but a feeling, an overwhelming sense of dread that settled deep in Johnny's chest. The aliens around him recoiled, their bodies displaying signs of discomfort or fear in their species-specific ways. Okay, Johnny said, exhaling sharply. That's new. Before he could attempt another message, the ship emitted a beam of light that struck the citadel. Instead of causing destruction, it projected a three-dimensional image into the observation deck. The image was a distorted humanoid figure, its features obscured by shifting shadows. "Alliance," the figure rasped, its voice like the grinding of stones. "Your time of dominion ends. We are the Harbingers." "Harbingers of what?" Johnny asked before any of the council members could respond. "Entropy," the figure replied simply, and the image dissolved. The silence that followed was deafening. The council members looked at one another, their fear palpable. Finally, Zixler spoke, its voice trembling. "We must mobilize our fleets. If these Harbingers intend to bring entropy, they cannot be allowed to proceed." "Hold up," Johnny interjected. "What's their deal? Why do they want to end everything?" "Their motives are irrelevant," Zixler said. "Their actions are what concern us." Johnny shook his head. "No, see, this is where humans differ. You gotta know what you're up against. Maybe they're bluffing. Maybe they've got a weakness. But if you just throw ships at them without understanding them, you're asking to lose." "Do you propose an alternative?" asked the Ctheran delegate, its mandibles clicking nervously. "Yeah," Johnny said. "I'm proposing we figure out what makes these guys tick. Get intel. Find out if they've got an Achilles heel." "And how do you suggest we do that?" Zixler asked, its bioluminescent form dimming slightly. Johnny grinned. "You're looking at him." The council erupted into protests, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of disapproval. Johnny held up his hands. "Look, I'm not saying I'll go in guns blazing. I'll take a shuttle, get close enough to scan their ship, maybe even make contact. You've got tech I can barely understand. Hook me up with some gear, and I'll get you what you need." "This is reckless," Zixler said. "If you are captured or killed, it could escalate the situation. And sitting here doesn't?" Johnny shot back. "Look, you brought me here because you thought humans could offer something unique. Well, this is it. We don't back down from a fight, and we're damn good at thinking on our feet. You want to stop these Harbingers? Let me do what I do best." The council fell silent, their hesitation evident. Finally, Zixler sighed, a sound like wind through chimes. "Very well. But you will not go alone. You will have a team of our best operatives. And you will proceed with extreme caution." Johnny nodded. "Deal. Let's gear up." Within hours, Johnny stood in the hangar bay, flanked by his alien team. There was Threx, a Ctheran with razor-sharp appendages, Sela, a Vrash whose crystalline body acted as both armor and a weapon, and Relek, a Brel with telepathic abilities. They were an odd bunch, but Johnny felt a strange sense of camaraderie already. They were all stepping into the unknown together. The shuttle was a sleek, egg-shaped craft outfitted with the latest in Alliance tech. As they boarded, Johnny couldn't help but feel a surge of adrenaline. This was what he lived for, the thrill of the mission, the chance to make a difference. As the shuttle launched, the Harbinger vessel grew larger on the screen. Its surface pulsed ominously, as if aware of their approach. Johnny took a deep breath, steeling himself. "All right, team," he said. "Let's find out what these Harbingers are really about." The shuttle's AI announced their arrival at the outer perimeter of the vessel. Sensors whirred as they scanned the ship, revealing intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change like a living organism. "This thing's alive," Threx muttered, his voice a low chitter. "Not quite," Relek corrected. "It's biomechanical. A fusion of organic and synthetic materials." "Fascinating." "Fascinating's not the word I'd use," Johnny said. "Creepy as hell is more like it." Before they could gather more data, the ship's surface shifted, and an opening appeared. The shuttle was pulled inside by an invisible force. "Brace yourselves," Johnny said, gripping his seat. "We're about to make first contact." The shuttle landed with a soft thud in a cavernous chamber. The walls glowed faintly, illuminating a path that seemed to lead deeper into the ship. "Well," Johnny said, standing up and checking his gear. "Let's go say hi." The air inside the Harbinger vessel was thick and oppressive, as if the very atmosphere resisted their presence. The glowing path beneath their feet pulsed rhythmically, almost as if it were alive. Johnny's team moved cautiously, their movements synchronized despite the stark differences in their physiology. Each step echoed ominously, swallowed by the organic walls that seemed to shift and ripple in response to their presence. "Everyone stay sharp," Johnny said, his voice low but firm. His pulse quickened as he scanned the corridor with the Advanced Alliance equipment strapped to his wrist. The readings were erratic, unable to make sense of the strange materials and energy signatures surrounding them. "We don't know what's waiting for us." Threx clicked his mandibles in agreement. "This vessel, it feels hostile. As if it knows we are intruders." "It probably does," Sela replied, her crystalline form glinting faintly in the dim light. "This structure isn't just a ship, it's a weapon." Relek, the Brel telepath, paused mid-stride, its gelatinous form shivering. "There's something ahead," it said telepathically, its voice resonating in their minds. "A presence. It's waiting for us." Johnny raised his hand, signaling the group to halt. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. The weight of responsibility pressed on his shoulders. This wasn't just about survival, it was about understanding the Harbingers and finding a way to stop them. Failure wasn't an option. The corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling disappearing into darkness. The walls were covered in pulsating, vein-like structures that glowed faintly, casting an eerie light. In the center of the room stood a towering figure, its form humanoid but grotesquely twisted. Its skin was a mottled black, with jagged, glowing fissures running across its body. Its eyes burned with a cold, unearthly light, and its presence radiated an overwhelming sense of dread. "Welcome," the figure said, its voice reverberating through the chamber like an earthquake. "You are brave to come here, little creatures." Johnny stepped forward, his jaw set. "We're here to talk. Find out what you want. Why you're threatening the galaxy." The creature tilted its head, a chilling smile spreading across its twisted face. "Threatening," it echoed mockingly. "You misunderstand. We do not threaten, we fulfill. Entropy is inevitable. We are merely its heralds." "That's a fancy way of saying you're here to destroy everything," Johnny shot back, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. "Why? What's the point?" The Harbinger's eyes narrowed, and it stepped closer, its movements disturbingly fluid. "The point, as you call it, is balance. Your kind, all kinds, consume and grow without end. You upset the equilibrium. We restore it." Sela's crystalline body shifted, her voice sharp. "That's not balance, that's annihilation. There are other ways." The creature's laughter was like the grinding of stones, harsh and unrelenting. "You speak of ways you do not understand. This existence is flawed, chaotic. We bring purity through destruction." Johnny's fists clenched, his instincts screaming at him to act, but he forced himself to stay calm. "We've heard your pitch," he said. "Now hear ours. We're not just gonna roll over and let you wipe us out. If you think we're gonna sit back and let you play God, you've got another thing coming." The Harbinger studied him for a long moment, its expression inscrutable. Finally, it spoke. "You are different. Defiant. Curious. It is why we chose to reveal ourselves to your kind first. We wished to see if you would amuse us." Johnny's gut tightened. This wasn't just an enemy, it was a predator toying with its prey. "And," he asked, his voice cold. "You do not disappoint," the Harbinger said. "But defiance has limits. Let us see yours." Before anyone could react, the chamber erupted in chaos. The walls seemed to come alive, writhing and reshaping themselves into monstrous forms. Tendrils of glowing energy lashed out, striking at the team. Johnny dove for cover, shouting orders as he rolled behind a nearby outcropping. "Threx, left flank. Sela, shield Relek," he barked. His team moved with precision, their training kicking in despite the alien environment. Sela projected a crystalline barrier, deflecting an energy blast, while Threx's razor-sharp appendages tore through the writhing tendrils. Johnny pulled out his pulse rifle, a gift from the Alliance, and fired at the nearest threat. The weapon's energy bolt struck true, but the tendrils reformed almost instantly. "This isn't working," he muttered, glancing at Relek. "Can you sense anything? Weak points?" Relek's gelatinous form shimmered as it concentrated. "The energy, it's centralized. There, at the core." It pointed a pseudopod toward a pulsating mass at the center of the chamber. "Got it," Johnny said. "Threx, cover me. Sela, keep those barriers up. We're taking out that core." Without waiting for confirmation, Johnny sprinted toward the pulsating mass, weaving through the chaos. Tendrils lashed out at him, but Threx was there, slicing them apart with ruthless efficiency. Sela's barriers deflected incoming energy blasts, creating a path for Johnny to reach his target. As he neared the core, the Harbinger's voice boomed through the chamber. "You cannot stop what is inevitable, human. Your efforts are meaningless." "We'll see about that," Johnny growled. He raised his pulse rifle and fired, aiming for the core's center. The energy bolt struck, and the core convulsed, emitting a high-pitched screech. The tendrils around the chamber spasmed, momentarily immobilized. "Now!" Johnny shouted. "Hit it with everything you've got." Threx and Sela joined in, unleashing a barrage of attacks on the core. Relek focused its telepathic energy, amplifying the assault. The core's glow intensified, its form destabilizing under the onslaught. "It's working!" Sela shouted, her voice tinged with triumph. But the victory was short-lived. The Harbinger's twisted form reappeared, its eyes blazing with fury. With a wave of its hand, it unleashed a shockwave that sent the team sprawling. Johnny hit the ground hard, his vision swimming as he struggled to regain his footing. "You cannot win," the Harbinger said, advancing toward him. "You delay the inevitable, nothing more." Johnny gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stand. "Maybe," he said, raising his rifle once more. "But we'll go down fighting." As the Harbinger prepared to strike, a sudden surge of energy erupted from the core. It had destabilized completely, its collapse imminent. The chamber trembled, the walls cracking and splintering as the ship began to unravel. "Fall back!" Johnny shouted, grabbing Relek and pulling it to safety. The team scrambled toward the shuttle, dodging collapsing debris and lashing tendrils. They barely made it aboard as the chamber imploded, the ship's destruction accelerating. The shuttle's engines roared to life, propelling them out of the collapsing vessel just in time. Behind them, the Harbinger ship disintegrated, its remnants swallowed by the void. In the silence that followed, Johnny slumped in his seat, exhaustion washing over him. The team was battered but alive, their mission a success, for now. As they drifted back toward the Alliance fleet, Johnny couldn't shake the Harbinger's final words. This was only the beginning. The shuttle cruised through the black void of space, its interior filled with a tense silence. Johnny sat at the helm, his hands gripping the armrests of his seat, eyes scanning the flickering displays for any sign of pursuit. Behind him, Threx, Sela, and Relek worked to stabilize the ship's systems. The Harbinger vessel's destruction had sent shockwaves through the surrounding space, disrupting communications and navigation. Every second they remained adrift was another second they risked being hunted. "Status?" Johnny asked, his voice breaking the silence. "Engines are functional but running at reduced efficiency," Sela replied, her crystalline form dimmed from the exertion of the battle. "We'll need to dock for repairs soon." "And the Harbinger?" Johnny turned to Relek, whose gelatinous body pulsed faintly as it extended a pseudopod toward the sensor array. "Its presence is diminished," Relek said telepathically. "But not gone. The essence of its energy lingers, scattered but persistent. It is not truly defeated." Johnny sighed, leaning back in his seat. "Figures. They don't seem like the type to go down easy." Threx clicked his mandibles, his tone sharp. "Then we must prepare. If they return, they will not underestimate us again." Johnny nodded. "Agreed. But first, we need to get back to the Alliance and let them know what we're dealing with." As the shuttle limped toward the nearest Alliance outpost, Johnny replayed the events in his mind. The Harbinger had called itself a herald of entropy, claiming to restore balance through destruction. Its motivations were incomprehensible, its power nearly insurmountable. Yet, for all its bravado, they had managed to destroy its ship and survive. That had to count for something. The outpost came into view, a sprawling, luminescent structure orbiting a gas giant. Docking procedures were swift, and soon Johnny and his team were debriefing the council in a secure chamber. The council members listened intently as Johnny recounted their encounter with the Harbinger, their expressions shifting between fear and determination. The Harbingers represent a threat unlike any we have faced before, Johnny concluded. They're not just another hostile species. They're something bigger, a force of nature, almost. If we're going to stop them, we'll need to work together. Zixler, the Brel Council leader, was the first to respond. Your insights are valuable, human. But this revelation raises more questions than answers. What are their true origins? Why have they chosen this moment to reveal themselves? And most importantly, how can they be permanently neutralized? We'll find out, Johnny said firmly. But we'll need more than just ships and weapons. We'll need intel, strategy, and unconventional thinking. The council murmured in agreement. Despite their advanced technologies and intellects, they recognized that humanity's unpredictability and adaptability might be their greatest asset in this fight. Over the next few days, the Alliance mobilized its forces. Fleets were repositioned, research teams delved into the Harbinger's energy signatures, and alliances were strengthened. Johnny and his team were given a temporary reprieve, but their minds remained restless. The specter of the Harbingers loomed large, a constant reminder of the battles yet to come. One night, as Johnny sat alone in the observation deck, staring out at the swirling colors of the gas giant below, Relek joined him. The Brel's telepathic voice broke the silence. You carry a great weight, John Carter. More than you let on. Johnny smirked, glancing at the gelatinous alien. Comes with the territory. Marines are trained to handle pressure. Doesn't mean we like it, though. Your resilience is remarkable, Relek said. But do not let it isolate you. Even the strongest need allies. Johnny nodded, his expression softening. Thanks, Re. I'll keep that in mind. The next morning, Johnny was summoned to a high-level strategy meeting. The room was filled with the Alliance's brightest minds, each presenting theories and plans to counter the Harbingers. Johnny listened carefully, offering his insights when asked. As the meeting progressed, a plan began to take shape, one that would require daring and ingenuity. The Alliance would send a reconnaissance team to investigate the remnants of the Harbinger's ship, hoping to uncover clues about their origins and vulnerabilities. Johnny was, unsurprisingly, chosen to lead the mission. Despite the risks, he accepted without hesitation. This was what he was here for. Equipped with cutting-edge gear and accompanied by a hand-picked team of specialists, Johnny set out once more into the unknown. The journey to the Harbinger's remains was tense, the silence in the shuttle heavy with anticipation. When they arrived, the sight was both awe-inspiring and chilling. The debris floated in a vast cloud, glowing faintly with residual energy. It was like standing in the aftermath of a supernova, the remnants of a great power now reduced to fragments. As they began their investigation, Johnny's team uncovered fragments of data stored within the ship's biomechanical systems. The information was fragmented and cryptic, but it hinted at a larger network of Harbinger vessels scattered across the galaxy. Worse, it suggested that the ship they had destroyed was merely a scout. So this was just the beginning, Johnny muttered, his fists clenching. Figures. The team's discoveries were relayed back to the Alliance, sparking a flurry of activity. Plans were made to track down the other vessels, to uncover their network and cut off their power at its source. Johnny knew the road ahead would be long and dangerous, but he also knew they couldn't afford to back down. As they returned to the outpost, Johnny felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Harbingers might be a force of entropy, but humanity and its allies were a force of determination. They would fight, not just to survive, but to protect the fragile beauty of the universe from those who sought to destroy it. As the shuttle docked, Johnny turned to his team, a small smile on his face. "All right, people. Let's get to work. We've got a galaxy to save." The war with the Harbingers had only just begun, but Johnny knew one thing for certain: they wouldn't be fighting alone. And that, more than anything, gave him hope. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories.